This is one of my favorite interviews. It was Matt and Trey from South Park, and they were talking about
the basketball guys.
Yes, you're right. I should have referenced the infinitely more popular basketball. Hi, and welcome to the Inner Moxie Podcast, a podcast about not one but two neurodivergent adults trying to live their best life on the Neuro D list and not hate themselves in the process. I'm your host, Ronnie.
And I'm Zanny.
And this week, we're talking about King of the Hill.
Yep. All right, so Moxie meter time. Where are you?
Right here.
I see.
I'm in odd predicament this week because I'm feeling higher on the Moxie scale. Like I'll call it out of 5. I'm going to call it 3. So right there in the middle. And it's coming up from last week was a 2 and the week before was a 1. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't know why, like things have gone awry over the course of the week. Like I basically just found out, I was talking about all the stuff with my house inspection and everything like that. And they are going to raise our rent. Not because of the inspection, like we're not getting kicked out, but they are raising the rent, and it's the maximum possible raise, which is like $300. And so like we're effectively priced out. Like we got to find somewhere else to live. And I don't know. Part of that is a relief of like, well, this isn't the outcome I wanted, but I'm glad I'm not in the limbo anymore. And luckily I've got some things on the horizon that'll allow me to, I don't have to panic about the move out. It's not like I'll immediately be out on my ass. So I'll have time to, make smart decisions about it. So yeah, but like, I don't know. I'm feeling pretty okay about things in general, even though nothing particularly has turned around and started going right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's where I'm at. How about you?
Well, I mean, I'm glad that maybe you've spent so much time already on the panic part of it, or like the anxiety piece, personal disposition fluctuates. It's not always associated to literal circumstances or like outside circumstances. So It's good that your brain is where it is now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'm a 10-point scale, 0 to 10.
I thought you said because you said I'm a 10, and I was like, oh, and then you're like point scale, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think it's really hard to gauge because it's kind of been weird. I mean, it's been 4 days since we recorded last.
Right.
So, I mean, I went to work yesterday. I don't know how to answer that. A 7.5 comes to mind again because I have some really awesome stuff and some really just like I was really super edgy today. I went to work yesterday in the office. I hadn't really left my house except to go to the doctor and like for an errand, in 9 days, which is very, very long for me. I typically
I think that's pretty long for most folks.
I think maybe that's true, but I was sick. It didn't feel like that. And I just needed a break from my cats, but then I got to the office and had to, interact with people as you do. And I started feeling like feverish again. Cause like my stuff has gotten better every single day. Like now I can barely feel the pressure and stuff in my right ear, but I'm still not 100%.
Right.
And yesterday was rough. I started feeling like I had a fever while I was at work. And I was like, I really don't want to go home though. Like I'm sick of those asshole cats. Like they've been terrorizing me at home. No. And it's because no matter how much attention I was able to give them, and that was probably the problem. I didn't leave them enough. So then they just got used to it. And then they would not leave me alone for shit. And I started having to resort to like the squirt gun while I'm just sitting at my desk. I'm like, I gotta fucking work, bro. Like you gotta get away from me. Like, stop jumping up here. And I'm just like, I don't want to squirt them because I want them to know I love them. But like also boundaries. Like I got to get some shit done. And like we cuddled all night. You sat with me in the morning. Like, I don't know what else. And it's all of them. It's not, I don't have the kind of cats that, people who hate cats think that cats are. I don't have the kind that are indifferent. Everyone
Right.
is obsessed with me. So,
The queen, she has returned.
here I am. I do control the food. I
That's
don't
true.
let them free feed. Like, I would have 20-pound cats if I did that. My cats can't handle it. So that was like bugging me out. But then today I was like, I have so much stuff that I have to get done.
Right.
Like, actually, I have a project. It's not going to get done quick because it's just a lot of work. But like, there was going to be so many people at the office extra, and I was like, I have to get this shit done. Like, if I go there, I'm not doing anyway. So, but then I was like, I really don't want to be here. These guys are like, acting crazy. I don't know. Things went out. I was out of routine at last. I had been not sleeping super well because after I stopped feeling like sick, I stopped taking like NyQuil at night. I would take it right before bed so I could stay asleep because my ears were waking me up.
Ew.
And so that had started happening. My sleep quality went down. So like last night I was like, okay, I'll take some ibuprofen PM. And next time if I do this, I should just take one, not two, like they recommend on the back, because that one feels strong to me. And I was groggy in the morning, sleepy, like even after taking like my Adderall XR in the morning, which, usually it's not like it's
Right.
like just like my brain is like, I'm ready. Like I was just groggy and not motivated. And that is not a good feeling to me.
No.
And that was out of routine. A 12:30 meeting got, last minute requested to be 11:45, and your people, I can't say no, let's keep it, which is fine. All the info was ready. It's just like those kinds of changes are really hard for me.
I hate that, especially if they're going to push it earlier.
Yeah, but I mean, it is better that is done early. I agree, but I agree with that. You didn't say that. But the thing is just like, that threw me just enough. Anyway, it's been one of these, but then I got confirmation today. I am going to Sick New World in Las Vegas this weekend, and I am so fucking excited.
Ooh, what's Sick New World?
That's a metal festival.
Oh, nice.
And festivals are usually worst case scenario for me. I don't like being outside and listening to music like that because it doesn't feel the same to me. I don't want to be around drunk, dirty, smelly, sweaty people. I don't want to go to the bathroom in a porta potty. I mean, everything about it is something I hate. But there's a lot of bands. System of a Down and
Never heard of them.
do you live under a rock? And Danny Elfman's going to be there. Who his name is tattooed right here.
Is he going to be with that new? I heard he was doing a project with that one guy. From Limp Bizkit, the guitar player,
Wes Borland.
Wes Borland, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea I don't know who he's playing with there, but he does have a lot of his own shit.
Okay.
He vacillates between, Danny Elfman composes like symphony type stuff, and then he has his own music that he's up to now. So he's gonna be there. Bring Me the Horizon's gonna be there, who I just love. Like, I shouldn't. The lead singer's look drives me crazy, not in a way, right? Like, I'm just like, you don't match your music. I don't understand you. But he's actually like so cool. Like, not in even like a fangirl way, but like the last time I saw them, like someone brought their kid and like he gave the kid a hug. Like it's that kind of stuff,
And festivals are good settings for that.
Yeah. That sends me in a frenzy though too. 'Cause I'm like, oh my God, I got so much shit to do. I have someone that has to come and stay with my cats. I can't just like leave them.
You're not taking your cats with you?
I need a vacation from them. No, but yeah, anyway. So I have a lot. That's why it's like tempering out to a 7.5 because I would have
this weekend.
Yeah,
Okay.
But I would have said a 5. Probably just because like I'm just in this like really like edgy, like headspace, partially because of some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. Then that thing is really exciting. So I don't know. So that's that. How about, do you have anything you want to follow up on from last week? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Our little housekeeping, as it were. There's two things. The first of it was, I have to go pull it up in my notes. I realized while cutting that episode together that I said I made a very long, descriptive tirades, maybe, that could have all been covered by the simple sentence: people with autism or neurodiversity in general are far more likely to be the victims of violence than the perpetrators of it. I feel like that was a point I tried to make.
Oh yeah.
With an hour's worth of talking that I was going through. I was like, that's what I was getting at. So I just wanted to say that. And then I did reference when we were talking about lack of touch and that, and not even necessarily autistic young boys, but that playing out in young boys and how that can be amplified in autistic boys. And I referenced, there was a quote. I said, oh, I wish I knew it. And so I looked up the quote, and this is from the book, If You're Reading This, You're in the Wrong Universe, by Jason Pargin. And he says, what she saw in his eyes was starvation. Outside of doctor's visits, horseplay, and attacks from bullies, he'd not physically touched another human in 7 years. He lay in bed at night and fantasized, not about sex, but cuddling. He was terrified of actual sexual contact with a woman, afraid of embarrassing himself, disgusted by his own body. As a result, all his masturbation scenarios were unfulfillable fantasies, perfect girls who were enslaved or brainwashed, if not literal cartoons. He was a ball of unfulfilled desire that had congealed into a black sludge of bitter narcissism and petty rage. And I just remember the first time I read that quote, and luckily I never congealed into petty narcissism and bitter rage. But like I was very familiar with the first half of that, and it was I don't know, it was something that made me take a second and realize how close I could have been to falling into some of those not so great incel movements or maniverse bullshit and coming out the other end. And yeah, I just wanted to share that quote because I referenced it last week.
Yeah, I would not have guessed that was the quote you were talking about. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, as a side note, do you think that starts in childhood, or is this teenager? Like, what is the age in this? Whoever is looking at this person's eyes,
the person they're talking about is a human, is an incel, part of an incel group. But I believe the woman they're talking about is like an alien time shifter. It's been a minute. I need to reread the book. But
okay. I mean, because I'm thinking about two different things though that we discussed last week, so that's why I'm not confused, but just trying to sort out. So you were talking about like physical touch in general, like of when you're saying, you said young boys, so I took that to mean, like normalize, giving affection, parental affection or whatever to your male children as well. Mm-hmm. So I took that as like younger kids. Mm-hmm. So are you, like, it doesn't sound like this has anything to do with parental, this is like being shut down by girls or fear of rejection from.
Yeah, I would say that. And I would say too, like, I think a lot of, I mean, it's certainly not the case with me and my kids, but a lot of men, especially of an older generation, were much less physically affectionate with their kids. And like every kid grows up to an age where you feel like you should stop being as affectionate with your parents. So it can certainly start there, but I think it is more of that kind of compounded insecurity.
So, I mean, not that we're in the business of proposing solutions, because I don't think that it would also be. So, the problem seems to be definitely compounded, but the support isn't there maybe at home. Plus, maybe they're being spoken to punitively by parents or others. Maybe the objects of their affections are not reciprocating, and it's building.
Yes, all of that is true. I also think kind of the way the kind of idolization we build around young men about being stoic, about growing up into being a man, about not needing just a hug sometimes. That's not a kind of thing that boys need. And then getting that so drilled into you that you kind of believe it. I think that's where a lot of it kind of sprouts from.
Okay.
Is that helpful at all, or is that?
Yeah. I mean, not masculinity necessarily, but the toxic kind, sure. And like, I mean, that's a big problem, and it is a self-maintaining problem because women, yes, do perpetuate that, mothers possibly as well, fathers, male figures, most likely perpetuated a little bit more because they give that direct feedback about it. Don't be a pussy.
Yep.
I hate that word, but I mean, it's often used.
It is.
Yeah, I think we should just have another flood. Let's just wipe everything out and start over.
No.
I don't know. I have no solutions.
Although that's the hard part about it is right now, as shitty as it is, it's better than it's ever been. It didn't took how long it took us to get this far.
Yes, and that's in California and the media, not necessarily anywhere in the middle.
Plus, I do have the belief that the kids are all right. I think these next couple of generations are gonna move just exponentially quicker than we did, and good on them.
I hope so. I mean, they've got social media.
What's that?
Social media is making a lot of things very available.
That's true. Yeah. So those were kind of the 2 points that I wanted to retouch back on. How about you?
Okay. I don't think I have anything from last week, but I did want to share maybe a tip/trick/hack.
Ooh.
Because it happened to me and I was able to suss it out. So, with being able to go on this show in Vegas,
Metal festival.
And I think we're going to go to this to see Bring Me the Horizon on Friday night as well. They're doing like a side show somewhere else. So now that someone is coming into my house, I go into perfectionism and have a myriad of things I want to have done before she comes over and stays at my house. And that is where the frenzy starts.
Oh, the person who's watching your cat.
Yeah, my cat.
I thought you meant like your friend when she came to pick you up. And I was like,
no,
just close the doors.
No. No. So that takes excitement and pushes it into anxiety for me. So what I did, because the confirmation came later this afternoon, but I kind of had a feeling it was going to happen because one of the steps was requested yesterday. It's a whole thing. So this morning I was like, okay, I'm tempering my excitement just because it could still be a no, but I kind of feel like it's going to be a yes. So there's all these things I have to do, and we're leaving Friday morning. So all these things. So now in my part of my morning routine is meditation. And then something that I call automatic writing. So I write in my journal, and that's different. That's me, writing out whatever's in my head, whatever. Like, that's conscious. Meditating, first of all I do is I open up the stopwatch or whatever, or like a timer. And I don't know what you call them, but like, I just start out with like 5 count breaths. So I inhale for 5 and I'm watching the seconds go. So I'm keeping track and my eyes aren't closed. Because when my eyes are closed, my whole brain is open. And all of a sudden I'm not meditating anymore. So if I'm thinking about it, sometimes I'll put a word or something, I'll write it down so that I can, know that that's there. And like, that's kind of like the intention that I'm setting on this meditation, like preparing me for writing. So I will do that. So I'll inhale for 5, hold it for 5, and then exhale for 5. And then once that becomes a little bit easier, then I'll push it up to 6 seconds, whatever. And I do that for 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much time I have.
Right.
And then I do automatic writing, which is writing out, I might prompt myself like this, da 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 da. And then instead of not thinking or judging the thoughts that come, but just like going with it. So like how it works for me is some people do it differently. There's lots of different ways. You can't fuck it up, basically,
Oh, but I can try. No.
You could, but you still wouldn't do it wrong. So then I'm like, okay, whatever thought comes in, I'll just write that down and not judge it and just see what happens, and that's just kind of how this all is. And so in my time with that today, I was like, oh, okay, so I need to actually just like triage the things that are must do's versus things that are want to do's. That was basically the message that I got, like
Right.
there are a lot of things that you want to do, but you're pushing yourself into like a manic frenzy versus just remaining excited and curious and, open-minded. So that was the message I got today. So that was a 2-parter. So kind of a glimpse into how I meditate. And it works for me because with the ADHD, I can keep track of what I'm doing, and my brain isn't everywhere because I'm watching the seconds, and like, I don't know, that works. It works for me.
Yeah, and then if you find a thing that works, hold on to it.
Exactly.
Until it doesn't anymore.
And not everything works for everybody, but if you're listening, and you're interested in meditation, it's something you could try, experiment around and see what kind of works for you. Then the other part of that is when you're kind of feeling like, oh, I have so much I have to do, like sit down, take a minute. You're not going to be sorry about this.
Right.
Take a minute and figure out, okay, these are the things I actually have to get done. Like, okay, doing my laundry and packing are things I have to do. I have to change the sheets and stuff on my bed because I only have one bedroom, and one bed. So I need to make sure those things are clean, clean the toilet and those kinds of things are the things that have to get done. And if you don't know, like a good guide would be, how would you want the house to be if you were going to stay somewhere and watch someone's animals, like that's the other thing. But yeah, so like sussing all that stuff out and then having a list of things that you want to do, and if you don't get to do them, that's okay. So I did do that.
Nice.
So that is a trick that was actually really helpful, and it kept me from like losing it even more. Today went on a hard day.
I was gonna say, I know it's like totally cliche, but I think it's not the same thing, but I think at least kind of parallel to it. And it's something my therapist has to remind me of from time to time, of like you kind of have to focus on the things that you can control. And so like for your example, you can't have the whole place cleaned up and still live your life and do all this stuff. But it's like, you know what? I can get these sheets out. I can get these out. And then another one, I used to bullet journal a lot. I don't know if you ever did the bullet journal thing.
I have a brain dump.
I was going to say part of that is brain dumping. And one of the things I absolutely loved about doing a good brain dump was once it was all on the page, it didn't seem as big. While you're juggling those thoughts in your mind, oh, it's huge. But like you write it all out and it's like, oh, okay. Or
it somehow becomes manageable.
Yeah. Well, it's always less than a page when it feels like I'm going to fill up a whole fucking book.
Oh, mine are always longer than that.
Well,
I'm a writer. It's just, I am a writer. Like that's how
right.
I've learned and am starting to harness that as like an asset, like I wrote all the stuff out in the automatic writing, but then also these are the things I have to do. These are the things that I want to do.
Ooh, nice Post-its.
And they are on to-do list posters with bullet points that you can check off.
Nice.
these are separate from my actual daily to-do lists.
I'm
so listy.
You're a very listy person.
I am.
Mm-hmm. Never refer to you as listless.
I'm not listless. I am listful.
So let me ask you, this week we're talking about a very specific episode of King of the Hill. It was season 2, episode 22.
That is correct. It's called Peggy's Turtle Song, I think.
Yes, it is. Let me ask you this: how much King of the Hill did you watch growing up?
I didn't watch a lot of it because the animation's a bit too jumpy for my brain.
Right.
And I can't do it. Dr. Katz or whatever the fuck was a show that I really wanted to like, and I just couldn't sit through it. I didn't understand why, but like after revisiting this episode, not revisiting, I don't think I visited it to start. There was no way I was going to watch that series because it's not stable. I need stability if I'm watching something. I don't feel sick. I just feel like I feel bugged out. I don't know. Okay. So not a lot, but I'm familiar.
I was gonna say when I was a kid and this show came out, like it came out at kind of a perfect time. I was already a huge fan of what Fox was going through at the time. The Fox going through is weird, but the Fox lineup at the time. Simpsons was a defining piece of entertainment from my childhood. And then, you kind of heard that the guy who did Beavis and Butthead, which I actually wasn't allowed to watch, but
I wasn't allowed to watch either of them.
But culturally, that they were doing their own show. And so I was very, very excited about it. And I remember I really did love it. And then a few years ago, I went back and rewatched it. And
Beavis?
No, not Beavis and Butthead.
King of the Hill.
King of the Hill. And I would rewatch Beavis and Butthead in a heart. I love Beavis and Butthead. But one of the things is my dad is an older school guy. He is also from Missouri originally. Or Missouri, as he calls it.
Is that where this takes place?
No, they're in Texas.
Oh.
But just that kind of more Southern mentality. My dad is very much not Hank Hill. But I don't know, watching the show and seeing kind of like, I always thought the show was such at a cool way of kind of mixing the good and the bad of all their characters together. Or like each character had good and bad. And that they were learning through the show. And I think legitimately, I don't think they hit a hard reset after each time.
Who are you talking about? The characters or the writers?
The characters.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I don't know. Just King of the Hill has always kind of held a special part of my heart because of the way they did that. Kind of helped me understand my dad a little bit better.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I was a fan of King of the Hill. But this was like an early episode, and I think I told you earlier, I didn't remember that much of it, except for that Bobby got the thing and one of the gags that they had in there where he was staring at the checker piece. It's like all of the other checkers have 96 except for this one. Which I don't know. I guess we'll kind of get into that. What did you think about the episode as a whole, and what did you think about its representation of ADHD?
That's a loaded question. I think when I realized that the show was actually about feminism and ADHD was a subplot.
Yeah, it was a B storyline.
I liked how feminism was approached. It was palatable, I think, especially for the time. And so I liked that part of it. I watched this twice. The first time, I really enjoyed, Peg's thing, her arc with that. The ADHD stuff, I mean, not only was the animation so jumpy that I was already like twitchy, but everything about it, I was like, this is okay. Why are all these stereotypes there? I was like, I honestly, the message that I got, big picture, was everybody, you know, give some room for the women. Women are people too. and then on the ADHD front, the messages were very different. And I don't know the show well enough. I don't know the showrunners well enough. So I don't know if this was supposed to be some kind of jarring thing and bringing awareness, which I don't think it was. It seemed very like ADHD isn't actually real. It's just bullshit. That was what I grasped without any other context.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that, and I think that too. Part of it was, just as like so people have an idea of what went down, at least on the ADHD, the kind of B storyline. Basically, Bobby has too much sugary cereal. 4 bowls of
sugar cereal, and the last one was his dad said oatmeal, put some sugar on it. So he got sugared out.
Yeah, and he had a sugar spike in class, and so he was acting hyper. They sent him to the nurse, and the nurse kind of flippantly diagnoses him right there with ADD. No H in it yet.
I think she said ADHD, and then they called it ADD afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Because ADHD was already in the DSM at that point.
I was going to say, because the pamphlets I remember said ADD.
Oh, maybe.
But yeah, so that's kind of thing. Bobby is misdiagnosed with ADHD and put on, I believe they specifically called out Ritalin. Yeah. Which is close to home because that's mine. And I think a lot of it too was kind of in response to, at the time,
this was 1997.
97.
98. 1998. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just have to be factually accurate, otherwise my brain will break.
But I think part of it at the time was that this was coming out, and there was kind of a pushback on ADHD, like there is on autism now, of people like acknowledging it existed, but also was like, but like the rate that they're giving it out or giving out the diagnosis is ridiculous. Which I remember kind of believing, copying into that. And I was like, yeah, well, I mean, you know, I had ADHD, but like they're giving that diagnosis to everyone. But then I think back to it, it's like, no, they weren't. It was like 3 kids I knew with ADHD. Yeah. We were probably short on ADHD diagnoses at the time, but I think that was kind of the social, that was in the stratosphere at the moment. That's
this got me onto a whole rabbit hole with like the timelines and like, okay, I was like, okay, all of these things are here, but how did they get here and how did these things become stereotypes? So I just did like a quick version of studying for myself, and kind of came up with like a timeline of like how things were introduced and like kind of what was going on culturally leading up to that point to where all of those stereotypes existed. So when we get to there, I'll share. Because I was just like, this is so heinous to me, but also how? Like, I can't just watch this and just let that go. Like, now I really want to know, why did people think this? You know, why was this just like the street version of what, you know, like I remember people saying like, oh, ADD, oh, Ritalin. And it probably has a lot to do with, you know, the class of drug that works. Anyway, so.
One of the things I did want to bring up, which is harder to, there's no way to know this, unless you look it up. But when the episode did air the first time, it did actually air with, you know, I haven't been able to find out information on exactly what, but with like a thing, I think either right before the end credits or before the show started, that said, oh, you can follow up with these resources to learn more about ADHD, or ADD, whichever one they won.
Remember seeing that
when it aired on TV.
Oh.
That's why I'm saying there would have been no reason to know this watching it now on Hulu. It was not part of the thing. But when it aired on TV originally, it did have that in it. So there was something there. And not that excuses, not that anything, but I think it's worth noting. But yeah, I don't know. One of the things I thought was kind of weird about the episode is that, ironically, when Bobby Hill goes on the Ritalin, he mellows out a lot, which is not a side effect, especially if you don't have ADHD of Ritalin. It's a stimulant, a very effective one. I think at the end of the episode, they have a gag where Luann had taken the medication and she was super hyper, which is more accurate to what you'd see, or at least if you were going to make fun of it. But it was funny when some of the stuff like the 96 things, or when he kind of got that sixth sense, like his
Luann was coming home. Is that where you're not talking about that part?
No, yeah.
He was like, Luann's home, and the dog was right next to him and doing it too. And I was like, okay, so I actually have some comments about this. So first of all, there still is, and some side effects of medications. I don't know if it's Ritalin specifically or ADHD medication, but some mental health prescribed medications make some people feel like they are zombies, basically. Like a friend of mine was like, oh, this one makes me feel like a zombie. I feel like a shell of myself. So that's part of it. But then I was like, this is saying this, maybe that was part of the whole culture, like, oh, you give your kids, medication, it's going to turn them into a zombie. It's going to turn them into this, going to turn them into that. They're not going to be themselves, which that's kind of what was happening there. But then also I kind of took, the fact that the dog was right next to him and they both did that thing. It's like, okay, so you're saying that this turns a person into like an animalistic version of themselves. I didn't think it was funny at that point because I wasn't really laughing at this whole episode because that's not why I was watching it. I was like, it's saying that it's changing people down to their core. I wrote down all the messages that I got from it. Let's see. No, that was it. About the animal thing. That's all. I was like, it wasn't a good message. Like maybe it was a funny joke, but it's also just like, it makes. Anyway, we'll get to my.
I was gonna say, well, one of the things that was and did give me a chuckle, and maybe I'm looking at.
I'm being too harshly, and I'm. It's not even about harshness. I understand that it's like a funny show. The reason for me watching it wasn't entertainment. So I was looking at it through a different lens too. I will put that in there.
No, but I was going to say, like, the thing about that gag that got me is that in the sense I was looking before, is that he heightened his senses. And so, but it is like the electricity's in the wall thing. And so it was very weird to me because I, like, even now, it's been windy the last couple of weeks, and I have a gate on my front door, and my kids ripped off the thing that makes it stay closed, and so it slams and crashes closed in the wind, and like it drives me crazy. I will be working, and I'm like ah. And my wife doesn't notice it at all. Yeah. But it was also like the electricity in the walls thing we've talked about, where it's like, no, I always hear the electricity in the walls. So it was that's kind of how I took it. And it was same with the gag about the milk.
It's going sour.
Yeah.
There it goes.
There it goes.
Yeah.
But just kind of but it was weird to me because it was like in making fun of it, it was more like he had ADHD after he started taking the Ritalin.
And that could be like a bigger comment, or because I noticed that too. I was like, the first day that he took it in the show, he's on the bus and his friend's like, "Do you feel it yet?" He's like, "I think so," or something. His speech got slower, but also there was a fly on the windowsill.
Oh yeah,
and he could hear and I was like, "This is what happens when I don't have medication."
Yeah, which I thought was really because like. I thought that was just kind of the weird thing about the episode was the Luann thing made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you, whether or not you think that particular gag is funny. But the Bobby thing, it was weird. It was like taking the medication gave him ADHD.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of weird for me.
Yeah. I mean, cause I don't understand the purpose of the episode as far as the writers are concerned. I don't know what their motivations were. So it's hard to say. But this could also be chalked up to, this is what people think will happen, you know, like, and I was like, one of the bigger messages is like, ADHD isn't real. And, you know, we are medicating kids that don't need it, and we're giving them ADHD.
And we're overdiagnosing kids, I think is also a thing, which I don't agree with.
I don't either.
Saying one of the points of the show. I think that also too, I think one of the things that makes it hard is not this one I'll give a little bit of a break to the show for, because it was a B storyline. But they just kind of end with it of like, I think the last line is like, we should look into what those pills do.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, actually, I don't think that's bad advice.
No.
I think that's also kind of, because I've met people before that are kind of on the opposite end of like, no, I'd never give my kids medication. It's like, well, look into what it does, you know?
Yeah. Well, let me get into the messages that I got, you know, like the meta messages. I had to watch this the second time and take diligent notes in order to absorb these. Because the first time I was just like irritated by the episode, like for that subplot. Just because I was like, ugh, like, but this is why we're watching it, you know, and this is 1997. This is not, or 98. It's not now. So these are big and little points, but like things that I noticed. So one of the messages was food or diet causes ADHD. And that's a thing in this timeline that I will share later.
Okay. Because of the sugar stuff at the beginning.
Yeah. Like they're saying like, oh, you know, kids that act like that, it's just because of like, you know, the diet that they're eating. It's not actual ADHD. The mom just couldn't make him there's no attention there, you know, like anyway, so that was one of the messages I got. So ADHD can come out of nowhere despite no evidence. And this is kind of to the thing of we're over diagnosing, right? Because Hank is sitting there with the nurse and he was like, why hasn't anyone noticed this before? And
but that line does make me laugh. It's like, well, not everybody has the pamphlets that we do.
Right.
That's funny.
That was funny. But the point that I gleaned from that is like, they're also saying stupid people, uninformed people are diagnosing kids with this as well. Right. Based on nothing and convincing parents that their kid has this. Cause he was like, well, he does seem to stop focusing or whatever when I'm lecturing him, which is the normal thing to be checked out about when you're 12, or I don't know how old this kid is, but
I forget.
He was trying to see it, you know, which maybe Hank wouldn't have actually thought like that if this was real life. You know, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, the point was, you know, they don't think that the people diagnosing are credible is what I got out of that scene.
Right. Also, I mean, for the record, I don't think you can get a diagnosis of ADHD from a school nurse.
No.
All love to school nurses. School nurses are wonderful people, but that's...
No, they can't diagnose shit.
Yeah. Especially not, and also not their job to.
No.
That's not their purpose. That's not.
I mean, if we're getting literal,
like even in the 90s, like I would say it was probably a few years before this that I got diagnosed with ADHD. And I don't remember a whole lot from it. I do remember there were meetings though.
Right. I mean, even back at this time, I don't know if it was like this before, but like technically, so here's a tidbit if anybody's curious about this as well. So in the school setting, a student can be not necessarily diagnosed, but qualified for special education services as autism or autism-like, or I think now it's called other health impairment, which would cover ADHD. But they can get assessed by the school psychologist for that. It's not a medical diagnosis, but it's something that can get them services at school. So that kind of a thing could happen. But they wouldn't be able to be like, oh, just go get them medicated or medicated.
Yeah.
Why did I say it like that? Just go get them medicated.
Yeah.
Go do this. Anyway, so that's how that works in the school setting, not the school nurse.
I remember when my son first got diagnosed. I believe. I'm trying to remember. I think he got diagnosed at the school first, and that was very confusing me. I was like, how can a school diagnose him? And they're like, well, they can't, but this will allow certain services.
Yes.
And then we got
it's a classification, not a diagnosis.
medical. Yeah. Then we got a medical diagnosis, and that opened up more services.
Yeah. And I do think that it is a decent system for the schools to have, because, getting a family without resources, if you're going to require a medical diagnosis, these kids are not going to learn. So I think that this is a good workaround, because not every kid comes from the same type of family. There's a stratosphere. Is that the word? No. There's a lot of variations, a lot of circumstances. A diagnosis is not even actually required to receive ABA services. Through certain funding sources. It's preferred, but not,
Right.
Most kids get to go see the doctor regardless of, type of insurance. So,
but also, and it's something like we're learning as adults, maybe not necessarily the doctor that can diagnose them with ADHD.
Right. And ADHD is completely different.
Yeah. Or in autism too.
Yeah. ADHD and autism, the treatments are very different. Like ADHD kids actually have to have the medical diagnosis and things to receive any kind of home-based service.
Gotcha. That makes
other than counseling.
Right.
But I'm not going to get too much on a tangent on it, but like with my therapist background and my behavioral background, like kids with ADHD only wouldn't qualify for home services, but counseling can help. It's just parents have to be involved. Like parents can't just be like, you go fix it. Like I'm chilling. Like, no, like there's a lot of structure that needs to happen. There's a lot. Parenting any kid, I'm sure, is very hard, but especially when there's behavioral issues on top of it, it's got to be super rough. Anyway, I'll get off that soapbox.
Good. You're tall enough as it is.
I really am. Okay. So
for the record, I think it's cool that you're tall.
Thanks.
That sounded like a jerky thing to say, and I was like, I hope she knows I was making a joke.
Oh yeah, no, I've accepted and now enjoy being tall.
You should. I think being tall is cool. As someone who's 6'2", it's helpful.
Yeah. I help people at the store all the time. I see people struggling for something on the top shelf, and I say, do you need help? Because I think that's nice.
That is.
And I think that it's not because I'm doing it because I want them to think I'm nice. I'm just like, this is the right thing to do. Like, why should you have to like hop up there to get, like, anyway. Why not? I've got the arms for it. Yeah. Here you go. Okay. So there's also like perception issues that they bring up, right? So when Luann finds out about this, she's like, do you know who I am? Anyway, so like that is something, but I'm sure that happens if people find out, they have ADHD, they're slow. They're not going to know anything. It's like, do you not remember from yesterday? Like before you knew about this?
Also, and I forget, you may not know this having not watched. Luann is not the smartest of the characters. Yeah, she's heart of gold and very diligent and works forward, but came from a not great background.
Is she a cousin?
Yes. Well, I guess she's Bobby's cousin. She is. I forget if she's on. I think she's on Peggy's side, but she's coming to live with them because, like, she's. It's not a term you'd like to use, but trailer trash. She was like literally from a trailer. I believe her parents got in a fight, and that's why she came to live with Aunt Peggy and Uncle Hank.
I see.
And she's also very emotional, which Hank doesn't know how to deal with, because he has very late teenager or early 20s, but has this young woman in his life when he never raised one. Because, and they mentioned it once in the show, but especially through the beginning of the show, it was a running joke that he wanted to have a bunch of kids, but he couldn't because he has a
small
narrow urethra.
He said it in that show.
Yeah. But like Peggy
episode.
keeps bringing it up because it doesn't bother her.
Yeah.
But like he has to whisper it every time.
I have a narrow urethra.
You know I want.
Yeah, that was funny. I mean, I don't think the show is not funny. I just wasn't watching it to be entertained, so I was just like taking it more serious.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of stuff is funny, including poop and farts and stuff. I love all that. I do have a sense of humor, everyone.
Yes. No, definitely. I think we spend a good amount of this show laughing.
That's true. I don't take everything so seriously, but like I wasn't, again, I've said it 3 times now, not watching this episode to be entertained.
Yeah, well, and we are going back to an episode that's what, he's 35 years old?
No.
Is my math wrong on that? Please
Yes.
say. Wait.
25. 26. 98, 24.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're right. 26-year-old, in seeing how they treated a mental condition has aged over 26 years. That's not a place for you to hop in and have raving reviews of any show, I think.
Right, I know. I mean, so many shows, even language has changed in television a lot. People are much more mindful now. And even in things, like 10 years after that, I think people are saying things that they shouldn't. Anyway, what the only 2 treatment options that were provided to were, okay, you got to medicate him or you got to send him to a special school across town. Does he know how to button his own something? I mean, it is interesting. Like someone that I know disclosed that they are on the spectrum to their employer, and then the employer proceeded to treat her differently, saying things like, do you understand? Like literally like how Luann did it, basically is what it seemed like. And I was like, that's so fucked up. And that's someone in the behavior modification field.
Right.
Potentially with a board certified, what am I saying? Potentially a BCB. Like this is nuts. This is not something that should occur.
Right.
But people there's that stereotype like, oh, they're special. Oh, like why does special or why the diagnosis means, you think that this person is all of a sudden stupid.
Right.
Like, ASD and ADHD and all of NeuroD does not equal stupid or intelligence or any measure of anything. It's a spectrum of things, but like people have stereotypes that they play out. Like
for sure.
You mentioned it earlier and now it makes sense about, a person on the spectrum is much more likely to be a victim of violence, I think you said, than the one perpetrating. And in this context, yes, because people automatically go on the defensive, like, oh, I don't know what they're, what are they going to do? I don't know. It just if someone you've interacted with many times then discloses this to you, nothing has changed except for the fact that you know something different about them now. And you have this entire history with this person. There's no reason for you to think all of a sudden this person is stupid. Yeah. Like that is nonsensical.
Yeah. Well, it's like the person hasn't changed. Your context for understanding them has, but they're the same person. They're still your friend or your coworker or whatever.
Like, what does it really change just because you know that? Yeah. And if it does change something for you, that's okay. But examine it and don't project that onto that person. Yeah. That's what I would say.
And too, I don't even think that this falls into like it's not color, but the colorblind thing or like the I don't see disability thing. Because in this scenario, we're talking about people that you have already known. And it's, is the Luann thing of like, what has changed since yesterday when you found this out about me, by the way, not me specifically, but in the scenario. Yeah. So I'm sorry to hear about your friend. That sucks.
Oh yeah. I mean, it does suck. It is unfortunate, but like I tell everyone at work that I am medically diagnosed ADHD because that's congruent for my personality. And it's important for me as I am unmasking and sharing things, that are some things are assets and some things are difficulties. If I'm having a reaction, I would rather just tell you why. I am not even like as in explaining my behavior, but like I am like a constant narrator. And I do think it's because when I was trained as a behavior interventionist at the beginning, like 20 years ago or whatever it was, we learned that narrating what you're doing helps, you know, the person that you're working with. It just gives context, you know, so just talking, you know, like if a kiddo is working on like, I don't know, if they're adding words to their word bank, their internal word bank, you know, the more that you're like, oh, you know what? Okay, I need to write this down and and this with this pencil and this blue thing and whatever, you know, just like I got used to that. And I flip a switch in my head all the time where it goes to, okay, well, this is just how I am now. It's just like how it goes. It's not like I'm a chameleon and I try to be 100 different things.
Right.
It's just like, okay, I need to do this. And this actually is helping me too. So now this is just integrated.
Right.
So that's probably why I am explaining things as they happen in real time. Like every time I cut someone off, I say, I don't know how to stop doing this, but I do kind of make fun of it just so that everyone knows it's not on purpose. Like,
right.
I do it to you all the time too. And I'm sure you do it to me. I don't know. That's how my ADHD kind of comes out a lot is I just don't even know I'm doing it until I catch it. It's not, I can't find the precursor behavior that is like, shut your mouth. Someone else is talking.
Well, and I think too, a lot of that comes down to impulsivity. And, you know, people sometimes attribute impulsivity to these grand things. Like, you know what? Let's go to Vegas tonight. Let's go to Vegas right now. Let's do that. And that certainly covered it. That's certainly part of it. But also, like, you know, that fucking little video game that I had to play when they diagnosed me of like press X when an X comes up and they'd switch the number like and every single one of them is, you know, a something that said knock something over in your mind, and it's impulsivity. Yeah, and that's just part of it.
I never would have thought of it that way, even though that is a very impulsive thing. But like, I don't get the bigger itches often. You know, like go spend a bunch of money. And like to me, I attribute all of that stuff, or like it's more. In my head, someone who goes out and all of a sudden is up, you know, for 24 hours and has bought an entire like new living room worth of stuff, like that to me signals, you know, some kind of like other mental health event from another diagnosis, like maybe bipolar, maybe something along those lines, you know, like with those kinds of things. I don't attribute, I'm not impulsive. I like to know what's coming at, you know, but that is definitely impulsivity.
Yeah.
You know, like I have lots of tiny little scratches that if I just don't do the things, and I guess in talking, I've just never tried to pay attention to it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and I think too, it's that thing of, you know, I said before, like not to underestimate the power of narratives. And like, I think, you know, you have things like impulsivity and people want to, and I'm not saying like people are bad for this. It's just kind of how we're a little bit wired. You want to attribute like things that can have a moving soundtrack underneath them. You know, the person who does spend their whole life's savings buying new stuff because they couldn't stop themselves, or, you know, people always want that dramatic thing that you miss those little impulsivities that that are everyday life. That, you know, that like, I know I can't have food stacked in certain places because I impulsively eat. And if I walk by that, then I'm just going to eat that. Same with like chips and salsa at a Mexican restaurant. I will go for hours if you keep putting that in front of me, because it's an impulsivity that I have.
And it's salty, and salt is one of the three things that makes you keep going back.
Yeah. Eventually I start to justify it. I'm like, this is just basically a vegetable medley. which is true of salsa.
It is.
But
Salsa
you have to eat
in and of itself is not unhealthy at all.
I like to throw salsa on lots
In
of
fact,
stuff
I
to
would
get more
argue that
vegetables.
it is healthy.
Yeah. The problem is just what you have to, is what you have to eat it with that becomes a problem.
Or what you do eat it with. You don't have to eat anything with
anything.
anything.
Yeah, but who's going to eat fucking salsa with celery? That's what I'm...
Oh, well, this might not be a kind... People with eating disorders. A lot of people have disordered eating.
That's true.
Self-included, which is not an eating disorder. But, lots of weird rules about things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This may be a side note. I realized today when I was at the grocery store, getting groceries, which is one of my favorite things to do at a grocery store. And,
one of the only things you can do there.
And I did not notice this until I was checking out, because I always watch the number as total as it goes up.
Me too.
And so I hate getting surprised by stuff. So while I was waiting in line, I didn't even recognize I did this. I completely reorganized my cart by price. And so I made sure like all the meats and that stuff was like up at the front, the expensive stuff, the stuff I knew was going to cost a little bit. And then like the produce was towards the back, because the produce was actually pretty cheap. And I don't know. That was something I did today. And I was like, that doesn't feel too neurotypical.
No, yeah. I mean, I watched the count thing. I've never tried to organize it that way. And it didn't sound like you tried to. It's just what happened.
Although
it's like a subconscious thing.
But it wasn't until I got to the line that I did it. So it wasn't like while I was doing it. It was while I was waiting in line. I remember. And I did I think it just started off with like, put the meat up because it is expensive. And let's get the expensive stuff out of the way. So that I don't get surprised.
I'm like hovering around $30 until
and then
bam, 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 bam.
And it's like, and so I was like, get the expensive stuff out of the way. And then it just kind of trickled down from there. This has nothing to do with King of the Hill, but
that's okay.
This is a story I wanted to tell about a weird thing I do now, apparently. Because that's not going to be a single time thing. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Well, now that you're aware of it, you'll probably do it on purpose as you're shopping. Okay. Let me see if there's any other the bigger ones that I wanted to bring up. ADHD is caused not only by food, but also parenting is what kind of one of the messages could have been. I think overall, though, is one of the messages that I got, like, ADHD isn't real. So I think I was like, I'm having a hard time articulating, and I can get way too detailed. Like, I have 2 pages worth of notes of just like show stuff, and this is just the ADHD things.
Right.
But I think that the overall message was that, this isn't serious.
Right.
And I don't know if that's what they meant. I literally don't know. I'm not saying that to just like cover my ass. Like, I have no idea because I didn't watch the episode before or after or the season or the entire series. Right.
I will say this. I think I might put it adjacent to yours. I think that that the show was really more about the dangers of ADHD being trendy at the moment, a trendy diagnosis. And I think that's wrong. I don't think that's, I don't mean like morally or whatever, although probably a little, but I think that was technically incorrect even at the time. Maybe especially at the time, probably.
You want to know?
I do.
Okay. Are you done with your thought? Because I think you might have had one more point.
I do. Yeah. So I think it was just, like I say, adjacent. Also, I thought it was really weird that they kind of, and thinking back on it, maybe they didn't see it coming, but the abuse of ADHD meds, the fact that Luann takes it when she shouldn't, that was just a one-off gag, that was kind of weird. But I think that's more of looking at through today's lens, where kids are selling Ritalin, or that's probably not true, but
I don't think that's fake. It is real. It might be selling Adderall more. I think Adderall is the one everyone wants.
I get it. I have an old-timey medication. It just reminds me of the good old days. No, like I said, I think it's dated. Dated's wrong. I think it was wrong at the time. I don't think it was like, I don't consider it like majorly offensive, but it is for a show that I love. It is. I mean, I still thought the episode was funny. I loved all the Peggy stuff. By the way, it's one of my the musical notes thing. The every girl band deserves funding instead of every good boy does fine.
Yeah.
Oh, that gave me a hearty chuckle.
Yeah.
Also, that Peggy has no idea that the song she's writing is a metaphor cracks me up.
Yeah.
No, this is about turtles. Sure, Peggy.
Right.
So I think it's a funny episode. It's good, but I think the ADHD stuff was a bad take at the time and hasn't gotten any better.
Yeah. If I had watched this, if it didn't have the specific type of animation, I probably would have watched it, because I was watching Daria, I was watching South Park, I was watching those kinds of things. Just that my brain just couldn't be at peace with that style. But I was like, all right, so all of these stereotypes are in there. It is a good kind of like 1990s check. I do think that it was still very heavy, actually. We're over medicating kids, because it wasn't until 91 where it really kind of amped up. So
what ramped up in 91?
Diagnosing more kids.
Okay. With ADHD specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll get there. So
no, just clarifying. Everything's going wrong.
It is. So all of these things really sparked in me a desire to know why these stereotypes exist. Like, what was going on culturally? What is the buildup? Because how did these things get there? So, I mean, I didn't look super hard. I just went to a semi-reputable source that is, in my estimate, like Healthline, which it's not the best. It's not the worst.
Right.
It's something where I could, anyway.
It's going to give us something.
Yeah. So, like, the first documented, 1902. Britain, 1902. My favorite British ladies are tidying up their homes.
A year before the invention of the airplane.
Oh. So some guy named Sir George Frederick Still, he's a pediatrician. He observed a group of 20 behaviorally disturbed children that were easily distractible, inattentive, unable to focus for long. He noticed the symptoms were most common in boys, and that's why, and it seemed unrelated to intelligence or the home environment. And it doesn't say in this one, but in something else I read, it was attributed to a moral defect.
Yeah.
Not chemistry. So that was like the first kind of mention, like, oh, so these boys have this problem. So that's where it's just a boys thing. It is really important about how we talk about things, because like, it's hard to know foreshadowing. I'm sure this person was just saying what they observed or whatever, but that really carried a lot of weight.
Yeah.
For 120 years, 122 years
so far.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting better.
Right. So someone else a few years later, 20 years later, was like, oh, this actually could come from like a brain injury. Like, they noticed these things happening, with kids that got some kind of like brain trauma. And then, so this I found interesting. So in 1936, Benzedrine, amphetamines, was approved by the FDA. And then in 1937, a psychiatrist was giving Benzedrine to kids for headaches, and he noticed that their behavior improved, and nobody cared.
I know. Also,
nobody cared.
old-timey medicine is so funny to me.
Why?
Like, oh, we just got benzos. Let's give these to kids for headaches.
I mean, take cocaine if you want to stay awake.
Yeah. It used to be like a headache cure.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons, like, that I said fuck Freud a few episodes ago, is because, I mean, if it wasn't for Freud, I don't know what therapy would look like. So, like, obviously there has to be a tiny bit of reverence, but, like, all of the shit about, first, he was coked up. He was in love with his stepmother, not his natural mother. You know, like, these things.
I've seen a number of documentaries about people being in love with their
I have a problem with the process. Documentaries are pornos.
I know that's.
That is why it's just like, okay, he created this entire thing that some people still really love and follow Freudian stuff. I've conceptualized the case through it just for funsies, but like, it's not based on evidence. So I just have a really hard time with it. And I'm just like, I don't agree with like any of it. Like Oedipal shit. No, I don't. I am not on that train at all. I don't agree with any of that.
Yeah. Love languages. I'm that way about.
Oh.
There's really like, it sounds cool, but there's like no evidence for it. You know,
that's a whole Christian thing. That's probably another reason that you're not in love with it.
I don't, but Christians are usually so good with the science.
Okay, so
my apologies.
All right, so nobody cared in 1937, and then blah 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 blah. This is just like when, you know, I'm not going to go into all that. This is not the point of this. You know, the stereotype stuff that affects this stuff didn't come in until the 70s. So. Actually, well, in 1961, Ritalin is FDA approved for use in children with behavior problems.
I did not know it was that old.
Yeah. So in 1970, here's where it gets interesting. And I was like, okay, so all of these things did come from something, and it is not necessary. Anyway, let me just say it versus telling you. So there's a growing public concern for people being on drugs, particularly stimulants. Congress.
And do we mean prescription drugs at this point?
Stimulants. I don't think just prescription drugs. Okay. Congress passes the Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act, classifying amphetamines and methylphenidate as Schedule 3 substances, limiting the number of refills, blah, blah, blah. So maybe it is about that, but probably other things.
So we're talking kind of like a precursor to the war on drugs, or is this like the actual start of the war on drugs?
It's a precursor.
Okay.
So then, let's see. In 1971, amid widespread stimulant abuse across the United States, amphetamines and methylphenidates, not crystal meth, are reclassified as Schedule 2. Okay.
Methylphenidate is Ritalin.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I take it.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure
I'm on amphetamines.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is the case. That methylphenidate is the actual name for Ritalin.
All right. So then
if it's not, it's something very close.
Yeah. Okay. So then 1975, there's a media blitz that claims stimulants are dangerous and shouldn't be used to treat dubious diagnoses. Okay. That all sounds super subjective, especially saying dubious diagnoses. Okay. That means nothing. Let's see. Whoever Benjamin Feingold is, he advances claims that hyperactivity is caused by diet, not brain-based conditions. There's public backlash against treating ADHD with stimulant medication, especially Ritalin. So in 1975, that's when that's kind of all coming to a head. So if you think about 1975, that's when our parents, me and you, who are 40 now, so anyone who's around our age, our parents' age people are in high school, early college, whatever it is. They're old enough to hear all this shit going on. There wasn't as much television, you know, so if the news was on, that was probably on in the only TV in your house or whatever, you know, on during dinner. I don't know. So like all of these things are being absorbed by the future parents of the kids that are getting diagnosed in the 90s is what I'm saying. Okay. So then, so in 1978, for decades, a positive response to stimulant medication was considered evidence that a child had a mental disorder. And then some researcher discovered that stimulants have similar effects on children with or without hyperactivity or behavior problems, adding to the controversy. So maybe a little bit with Bobby, like, I mean, he slowed down. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not on there, but like he definitely focused more. He was over focusing.
Right.
Okay. So then,
although, and that's one thing I'll give the episode is that the drugs didn't necessarily make him smarter in any way, shape, or form.
No, but I don't know if we're talking about focus and smarts as the same thing.
But I'm saying it would be something that...
Oh, for the school?
That would feed the stereotype that you could have been like, oh yeah, well you gave Bobby the stimulants, and of course he all of a sudden now he's brilliant because he has again, like Luann thought of
right.
like
give me the smart magic pills or whatever she said, miracle pill, which for me it does feel like a miracle. Okay, so in 1991, the 80s, nothing really big happened. They just changed the name to ADHD and AD, and then without hyperactivity is when they called it ADD, undifferentiated. Okay, in 91, that is when ADHD starts being diagnosed a lot, and it's unknown whether people got better at diagnosing and or if it really increased. And this is what they say about autism as well too. And I definitely think we are so much more aware now of what to look for. Like there's no way that it's 100%. Not that. But if you wanted to spin it, you could. Diagnoses are on the rise, and like the CDC in 2012 was saying, 1 in 88, and now that is much smaller. That's for autism. So like you could spin it either way, Yes, there are tons of more people getting diagnosed now, but I don't know that prevalence has actually increased. I think visibility has increased, and I think diagnoses have increased because we're seeing it. Yeah, well, and we're aware of it because, like, you could say it was in the episode. Like my parents had never heard of ADD when I was diagnosed with it. Hank had never heard of ADHD when this thing came up. And I was going somewhere with that, but maybe I should take an afternoonie. Maybe you should. Bobby took it after every meal.
I know. Even before, it's funny. That's literally in my notes. Like, you took it before you go to sleep, you madman. How are you ever going to sleep? Because if you took it after dinner, there's nothing you need to think about, and it is a stimulant. You'll never sleep. Maybe
he was on. I mean, who knows? Kids and medication, it's much different.
That's true.
But I mean, I don't know what my friend's kid is on, but he can't take it too late because it'll keep him up.
Yeah.
And his, anyway, it's not Adderall that he's on. I know that, but that's it. That's all I know. Maybe Concerta. It starts with a C. So okay, the 90s, nothing big happened in the 80s. They just changed the name, is all that they put here. But by 1991, Ritalin and Adderall prescriptions reached 4 million, like 5.3 million in total, which was just like exponentially high compared to previous. So that's probably where all the mania. So if you're thinking about, okay, people the parents of these kids, when they were formulating their brain and their prefrontal cortex was not developed as they were teenagers, absorbing all of like the news media and the frenzy, like people are on drugs, stimulants are bad, they're using this for kids. Yeah. That is what is kind of underneath. And then now their kids are being told that they need to be on a stimulant. And so they're just like, no, like there's too many people on drugs. That's the kind of general thought then.
And I was going to say, and though nothing may have happened specifically on the ADHD front in the 80s, the 80s is where we see the war on drugs come in. It is where we start seeing the DARE program. It is where we start seeing Just Say No.
They rakened out.
It is, yeah. I mean...
well, the woman, what's her name?
Nancy.
Okay. The woman Reagan.
Listen, woman Reagan.
Listen, Reagan, don't exercise me. All right. So,
but like fears of drugs and that we were really starting to see Reagan's America, and that we still see part of it. Like, it's still, it upsets me And like, I mean, I guess there's something to be said for it, but it still upsets me that I am on so many medications, but I get them mailed to my house. I cannot have Ritalin mailed to my
Right.
house. I have to go get it. And it is
And
so
you
hard.
have to hope that it's in stock.
Yeah, right. Well, right now. But like, I don't know. The fact that now I have to remember to go get my drug that helps me remember things. Because we're afraid that somebody will abuse it. I mean, I don't know. At a certain point, you're harming the people that need it. And I guess that's a different episode or anything like that. But we still have those kind of those leftover Reagan era fears of drugs in all of its forms being the worst thing for society that's going to tear it apart, and that we have to be so vigilant about it, even at the expense of people who legitimately need it. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned on the show or not, but I think we talked about it. Like, I don't really have a better word for it, but I'm a teetotaler. I have an occasional cigar. I used to smoke cigarettes, but I don't do anything that affects my mind. So I've never done drugs. I never drink alcohol.
Never? You have never?
No. It's just it's not been a thing that's appealing to me. And so I'm not even coming at this from like, I'm not even coming at this from a point of view of like trying to get drugs out there. But the way that we were reacting to drugs, especially at the time, was, I think, clearly doing more harm than good. And I think it certainly was poisoning the well at least a little bit when it came to viewing kids taking drugs, taking prescriptions that could have made their lives better. Certainly things that you wouldn't have batted an eye about if it was a physical condition.
Right. And that's kind of always the thing, mental health stuff is getting more acceptable to people, but still not. I think people are more willing to accept ADHD and autism specifically, and I single those out in the neuro-D community because but even then you need to have a medical diagnosis of it, as a person who went to school to be a therapist, like technically a master's level therapist could diagnose someone with anything that's in the DSM, in their notes, whatever. But they can't diagnose or they can't prescribe anything,
right.
But if someone has these things, you can diagnose them as it doesn't stick.
Right.
So you need that medical diagnosis, which I don't know necessarily if that's like good or bad. Like with ASD, ADHD, I don't know. I guess it depends on like, what you need out of it, what the treatment options are. I mean, I don't know, but I was going somewhere too and I lost it.
Yeah, well, I still think, I'm not saying that you should be able to just go buy Ritalin or Adderall, the cool Ritalin that you take, from the 7-Eleven. If nothing else, we already have a shortage of it.
We do. And you can, we live in Southern California. You could just go hop the border and you can buy that stuff at a pharmacy. Like it's not locked up like it is here.
I did think it was kind of funny that both of us were like, hey, we'll watch this episode and then we'll do a little bit of research. And just as a difference between me and you, that you went and researched, and good research, by the way, of all the ADHD timeline. And I went and researched like the episode and the...
Yeah.
So one thing I did, and I hope this doesn't break your heart.
It's hard to do.
But... I did look up the writer,
Greg Daniels. No, he's a showrunner.
Yeah, he created the show with the person who actually wrote the episode. I did not write his name down, which I should have, but produced 143 episodes of this little program called The Office.
I'm not surprised because Greg Daniels, I was like, oh, Greg Daniels, I don't remember if he was there from the start, but I know he ran most of that show.
I think he came up with the idea with Mike Judge.
Yeah.
I think they're both credited as creators.
Okay. I mean, and that makes sense. I don't see how that would break my heart.
And he wrote 11 episodes of The Office.
Who is it?
as well.
Lieberstein? Paul Lieberstein. Couldn't have been BJ Novak because he's like our age.
No, it certainly wasn't BJ Novak. Let me see.
I mean, there were a lot of writers who were actors on the show too. So
he was not that. I think he
Oh.
played like background in one thing. Let me see.
Oh, the guy that plays Mose. He's was he in Breaking Bad? A little bit, not as a main character. Just tell me the name.
Yeah,
Mike
I'm
Schur?
pulling it up right now. I'm not trying to make you guess or anything. I didn't.
I'm not trying to. If you were trying to make me guess, I would have no idea. Like if someone had a gun to my head and all I had to do was like tell them the color of the sky, I would get shot. I wouldn't be able to come up with it.
Brent Forrester.
Okay, I've heard that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not mad at this episode. I think in 1998, like, this is exactly what was going on at the time. And if I knew more about, if I had watched, it would be like if I was like, hey, Ronnie, just go ahead and watch season 2, episode 17 of The Office. It's called Dwight's Speech. And only having you watch that, I don't know what you would come out thinking, you know? So it's kind of probably, I understand that that's might be what's going on for me. I'm not familiar with like the patterns of writing. I'm not familiar with like the undertones of the show. Like, is it we just talk about these things that are going on and we don't have an opinion? Are we pushing something? Like, I have no idea. I don't know like the flow of like the entire show.
Right.
Like at, episode to episode. So, I knew that going in there. So I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not criticizing anybody as far as the writing and everything,
Right.
It's just, I didn't have all of the context, which was helpful and then also not.
Just this particular episode was not the greatest jumping off point or jumping in point again.
Yes and no, because we did not talk about all the feminism stuff, which I did love all of that. So
it is, and I think that's kind of one of the things I love about the show, is that like Peggy, I think gets a bad rap. People like claim Peggy is like the biggest bitch of all, of all sitcom wives and stuff like that. And I really don't think she is. I mean, I get where she's a little arrogant on stuff.
Is that episode representative of her personality?
There's certainly episodes where she has more, no, I'd say she comes off better in that episode than she does most episodes.
So I was like,
but it's still overblown when people say it.
I mean, I could see it in as far as like, I mean, you never know. This came up also this week. People who make comments about anything. So like now it's social media, but whoever was making these critiques, who is the audience? Who is the speaker? Who is most likely to speak out about? These are all things that need to be known before taking anything seriously, in my opinion. But like, I could see it, she loves I got that she loved being a substitute teacher and she took it very seriously because she was a teacher in her head.
Well, and she's also like one of the things about Peggy, and it's one of the things I love about the series in general, is she's kind of blind to any criticism of herself because she's specifically a substitute Spanish teacher. She is the worst Spanish speaker of all time. Like just down to stuff like she calls guacamole, and
I mean,
which still cracks me up. She's just kind of blind about her own shortcomings on stuff.
So then this wouldn't be congruent at all because she was like, oh, was this me? Because I didn't have time to make him breakfast. Okay, if I have your support, I will just quit and I will be there for him. But then she kind of went overboard into like her group
But it's also how important she thinks she is.
Oh, yeah.
It's clearly not that she didn't make him breakfast, but that was the thing. And so she's like, well, I didn't do this thing. So that must be it, is he doesn't have enough of me. She's very kind of self-centered in that sense. Like she'll do anything for her family, but she thinks everything is because of her. And it allows her not to recognize when she's not good at stuff.
Oh, so she's like a low-key narcissist?
I don't know that narcissism.
I mean, the way you're describing it is,
You know what?
Someone very significant in my past.
Yeah, she certainly has an ego on her. We'll put it that way. I don't know that I'd push in narcissism in that she doesn't tend to hurt the people around her. But she certainly has those tendencies. But that's also like, as I say, one of the things I love of like in this episode, you saw it with Hank a lot of Hank is old fashioned and he wants that stuff for his thing. And it takes him a second, but when he sees that it's making Peggy unhappy, then it's not like he doesn't not want that stuff anymore, but he's like, no, it's more important that Peggy's happy.
So it's showing how change happens even in,
Yeah. And that's what I thought was always like the great thing about the show was all like, there were no great characters. There were no bad characters. There were characters that were a mix of good and bad. And I think
that's maybe more representative.
What's that?
It's probably more representative of people.
Yeah. And I think it gave a great place it gave all the characters plenty of room to grow.
Mm-hmm.
That's, and I think all the characters did grow over the course of the show.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I just agreed because it seemed to be the right thing.
I feel bad because they are, I mean, this is worth noting here. They are doing a reboot of it now, but like we lost the guy who plays Dale.
Who's Dale?
I don't know that he was.
You the one that talks weird?
No, that's Boomhauer. I did like the cameo of Boomhauer's mom in this one. No, Dale Gribble is the conspiracy one. I forget if he's really much in this episode or not.
Is he the bald one or
not the fat bald one? He's one who always wears the hat and is always smoking.
He was the one that. Okay, I can kind of see him.
Yeah, but the person who voiced him passed away. Obviously, Luann passed away.
Who's Luann?
Brittany Murphy.
Oh yeah.
Luann.
I don't know why I whispered that.
Luann had a boyfriend that was played by Tom Petty.
Is Tom Petty dead?
Yeah, Tom Petty died a few years
recent?
ago. I mean, for us, yeah. For a youngster, no.
Like 10 years ago?
Less, I think.
I don't keep up with stuff. Especially because like Tom Petty was like in the fringe of my reality in high school. He wasn't someone that I listened to.
Tom Petty for me, I do really enjoy Tom Petty. 2017. October 2017 is when he died.
9 years ago.
2017 wasn't 9 years ago. Well,
oh, yeah, you're right.
That's close. 7 years?
That's not close. Anyway, pre-pandemic.
Tom Petty, I never... Like, I got into him after he made his big hits. So, like, he always felt like a 70s artist to me. But I knew he was much later. So I always felt like a weird kind of out-of-time guy.
Yeah, I have no comment. I don't know. I don't register him much, actually. I think I'm just indifferent there.
Well, he's dead now.
Hope you're happy, Tom. You think he's just in nothing.
His music lives on. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You know what? Let nobody say you're not polite. Your manners are well intact.
Only in sarcasm. I am actually not polite. I don't think.
If you think about politeness, and this is kind of how I try and think about politeness and manners in general. If you think about them as acting in a way that is kind to other people and tries to be aware of them, then I think you're very polite.
Oh, I would agree with that.
If you think of it as a structured set of rules, then maybe not, but then I'm certainly not. I don't know what any of that means.
I don't either. I know that I have a bias against saying you're welcome, and that's because when I worked at Coffee Bean, when we would thank the customers or we would say here's whatever, and they said thank you, we could not say you're welcome. And that's a great point, because it's not like I'm personally doing you a favor. It's more like you say, no, thank you. Oh my God. It's kind of like one of those things. Like, you're welcome in that context. The way that the company described it was very, you're doing your job.
Right.
You're not doing them a favor. So you thank them.
Okay.
So it's more about appreciate the customer. And so now when I hear anyone say you're welcome in a customer service situation, I'm just like, I hate you. This is wrong. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. And that's how it feels. And I think that might have overgeneralized a bit. Because even in regular speech, I'm not huge on saying you're welcome unless I'm being sarcastic like I was or making a joke. I'll just be like, oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I just don't like it. And then sometimes people, when they write it in a work message, they say YW or something. And I'm just like, why? This is unnecessary. And now I have to read this message because if that red one doesn't go away, but all it says is YW. Like, this means nothing to me. I don't know. I guess I do have a problem with you're welcome.
It's superfluous.
It just doesn't seem personal. It doesn't seem specific to the context.
I remember when I was in high school, and this is still something I do. I actually have the opposite end of things. Because when people would say thank you, or when people would say thank you to me, and even now, I still rarely say you're welcome. I'll say stuff like, yeah, or no problem.
Same.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then, like, a friend of mine called me out on it. It's like, you say you're welcome, not yeah, sure. And I was like, oh. So now I'm kind of, I kind of get a rude aftertaste if I say yeah, sure, because I get called out on it once. And I think, and like I say, like, if you're going by a strict set of rules, sure, whatever, I don't care. But I think most times if someone says thank you to me and I say, they would know that is, a version of whatever your welcome is supposed to accomplish.
Yeah, people do know that. If someone is going to be a stickler about anything, because if someone wants to say you're welcome to me, that's their business, not mine. Like, if someone expects me to say you're welcome, please don't ever talk to me again. Like, I don't want, like, it's the same with like gift giving. Gift giving is very difficult for me. I don't understand when it's expected all the time, unless it's like a holiday or someone's birthday. It just feels like a lot of pressure. And if I get a gift unexpected, I just immediately feel like I owe this person something, and I don't want to feel that, which that's a me thing. That's not them. I understand that if I say no to someone giving me a gift, generally that is me shutting them down. That may give them joy. I don't know. It doesn't give me joy to give people things because it's just not how my brain works. But I also don't think that a person should be given something and then have expectations attached to it. I would just rather not have it, whatever it is. Even if it's a nice car, I don't want you to hold that over my head. I will take my fucking whatever. Well, I got a Tesla now. I don't need anything else.
You got a pretty nice car.
But like that, the point is,
yeah.
I don't like strings. I don't like being told what to do. I don't want to accept something and then someone is going to check in about it. Oh, did you like this? Or what about, like, I'd rather just not have that thing. I don't want that kind of pressure in my life. Like, I'm not going to enjoy it.
No, I get that. Honestly, you know what I have a hard time with is knowing the appropriate time to open a present if somebody gives me a present. That I like
I just ask. Yeah. Should I open this now?
That's probably a good way to do it.
Because otherwise, some people enjoy the reaction. Other people are like, save it for later.
Yeah.
And that part is about that person too. Like, if part of your joy of giving is to watch someone's expression, then I want to give that to you, even though if I feel uncomfortable, because the world doesn't revolve around me. So I just ask because it's just too hard to guess.
Yeah. Well, also too, because it's like one of those, like, even if like, it's like, well, I'm pretty sure you don't want me to bring this home and open it. Although sometimes it's like, maybe you want me to bring this home and open it. But like, am I to open it now? Are we going to keep talking and then I'll open it? Or do I go over there and open it? It's very weird to me. I don't know how to deal with it. And I mean, I get really awkward. So that's not the best way of dealing with things, but it is a way of dealing with things.
It is a way.
It is a way I've been known to implement from time to time, or most of the time.
I mean, there was a time where I would really want to know right away.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably when I was younger, when that type of impulsivity. Now I can wait and I can delay gratification, and I understand that can pay off sometimes. So now I don't have that impulse to just like know something right away for the most part. So opening a gift right away, like, it's not going to kill me, like, to not open it for a day or two, like that. But that it wasn't always like that.
Yeah, I get that.
I think a lot of people are like that.
Yeah. I mean, kids like opening presents.
They do.
I think most grown-ups still like opening presents.
Yeah, I always wrap gifts versus gift bags, because especially for kids, because I just feel like I enjoyed opening that way versus like moving tissue paper around.
Yeah.
There's just something more fun and magical about it. So I want to give that experience to children.
And it's one of those things I feel
and
bad.
It's cheaper.
Is it? Oh, yeah, I guess.
Depending on how many gifts.
Mm-hmm. No, I like wrapping things because it creates, I like rituals, and it creates a ritual out of it. And I don't know, there's something about unwrapping versus pulling out of a bag that just is very like visceral, and you touch it, and yeah. And I also too, I like that when something's wrapped, if it is like a Christmas scenario, like I can't do this with my kids because my kids, there's just no way the presents would make it till Christmas. But I remember at my house growing up, we'd wrap the presents and put them under the tree. And they'd be under there for a little while before Christmas Day rolled around. And so like you could go and shake the box a little bit. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I may have taken it a little too far and just like doing like trying to peek around the tape and stuff like that. But that's because I didn't like there being a mystery. Oddly enough, the thing that would ruin my day the most is actually knowing what was in there. Right.
That is a fun thing. I do want to say, for those of you listeners who are on the gift bag thing, I think a lot of that has to do with childhood and experiences, because if you were raised with gift bags, then that would feel completely normal to you and you might enjoy it. So there is something to that. I am just not on that train. I am not on that boat. I travel differently.
And we accept all people of all walks of gifting.
Yeah.
Are welcome here.
Yep. No gifts, also welcome. There's a podcast called I Said No Gifts. Anyway. Yeah. All right. Well, let's shut this bitch down.
I think so.
I'm so tired. Okay.
Vaguely misogynistic.
I did. All right.
Vague misogyny is my favorite. Vague
misogyny. Type. I mean, it's still internalized a bit. I'm working on it. Okay. Well, if you enjoyed anything you heard tonight, maybe most of it, I hope, like, subscribe.
Tell a friend.
Yeah. I literally have this in front of my face and I can't. Oh, leave a review, 5 stars, please. That would be great. Just read the paper me. Okay. That just ruined everything. Because now I'm like, now I've got to read this. Encourage listeners to rate and review podcasts. Write in. Okay. So if you want to send us a personalized message, you can do so. You can email us at myinnermoxypod@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on socials, we are on Instagram and TikTok at InnerMoxyPod. If you want to, and as of today,
that's right.
Our Patreon is live. You can go find us on Patreon. We are Inner Moxie Podcast on there. You'll recognize if you're looking at our icon on whatever you're listening to, it'll look like that. It's the same thing. So, yeah, if you want to, that too. Yeah, over there. If you want to support us financially, that would be awesome. We would love to get some new equipment.
Yeah. Well, keep this show running, put more stuff into it, and we'll have rewards up there soon. And
yeah, there's a couple tiers up there. It would, and anything is appreciated, like honestly, but, yeah, so that's exciting. If you want to follow me, because I am a religion and a disease and a cult leader as of last week, you can find me on Instagram at, Zanism, ZANNISM.
And if you'd like to follow me, well, first you can check out my other podcast, the Band Media Podcast. But also I'm on the social medias, but I'm most active on TikTok at Band Ronnie.
Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
That's right. Later.